Hey everyone, Dan here. Hey, I hope you're having a great day today. And I hope you've had a chance to watch those new tips I've been sending out. Those tips were never seen before by the general public. I just recently released those, so I hope you're enjoying those. And if you missed any of those tips, if you look up probably at the top of this website, somewhere on here there'll be a link so that you can see those. So you're going to want to check those out. I posted those because I knew that no one had ever seen those before, because I know a lot of people have been getting my tips for years, and these were some new ones that I had never released, so I thought it'd be cool if you had a chance to see those. And I also want to thank the people who took the survey and gave me their ideas of what would make for a great class. And I got amazing replies to that, over a thousand replies, and I'm personally reading every one of those. So thank you very much, and thank you for those of you who went on to leave a testimonial about any of my previous classes or my tips. I really appreciate that. I really do. And if any of you still want to take that survey and didn't get the chance, there's a link for that too somewhere on this page, probably near the top. So look for that. Okay? Anyway, what I want to do right now is I want to tell you a story about an artist I know. And in addition to that, during this story, I'm going to give you maybe 3, 4, 5 really good tips, because it's going to kind of work into the story. So watch for those tips, and I'll try to alert you to it when a tip comes out. Okay? So anyway, let's go on with this story. This is a story about a guy who was like a regular kind of guy, loved painting, and he took up painting because his wife was an artist, and it looked fun to him. So he decided to take it up, and he painted a few good paintings. And after 3, 4, 5 years, couple years, I don't know, I don't remember the story that well, he started getting some recognition for his paintings from his family and all that. But you know how that is. You can't really trust what your spouse says or what your parents say or your kids. So he was a little bit leery about trusting that, and he felt like he was making progress, but he still felt like he was an amateur painter, and he wanted to get better and kind of maybe even someday get to the point where he's kind of accepted within the art community as being an artist, and he kind of was looking for that significance that I think people are looking for. He was getting to that point in his life where he would like to kind of leave his mark on the world, And it wasn't really necessarily trying to become the next great painter or anything like that. Just wanted to feel like he's leaving something behind that was kind of part of him. And at this point, he was really tired of making kind of like amateurish paintings and paintings that would sometimes be really, really nice or have really nice areas, but then you'd have areas that look dirty or the painting looked dull. It couldn't get clean color, so it just kind of worked against the whole painting. And there might be really nice parts to the painting, but when you looked at the painting as a whole, it was kind of not really successful because of these bad areas, right? And here's the first tip. Most people don't realize that in the early stages of painting, if you're starting to get areas that look dirty, oftentimes it's either one or two things usually. Either you're using the wrong color temperature, you're using cool where it should be warm, or warm where it should be cool, particularly in the whites, it's where it's most obvious. Or you are like mixing too many colors. Like you should try to do your mixing with as few different colors as possible, like just 2 colors plus white, if you can, or 3. But if you get into 5 and 6 colors, you're going to start working against each other, and you'll start ending up with dirty looking paintings. Anyway, that's the tip for that. So anyway, this guy I know, he went through and he started reading books and taking classes, and he kind of did everything that everyone told him to do, He did workshops, classes, and he'd get better, but he wouldn't get better very fast. And he started to kind of feel frustrated about that because he would see other people that seemingly got it, and they were, no smarter than this guy, or at least he didn't think so. And he just couldn't understand why he wasn't getting it. And he just became more and more frustrated with the whole thing as he went through. And he just felt like it was taking him too long to get good at it. And he really, this is the thing he wanted to do. This is how he wanted to leave his mark. So he was really starting to feel frustrated about this whole process. There would be times when he would get so frustrated, he'd actually just quit painting and say, all right, I'm just never going to get this. And he'd quit painting. And, after like 2, 3 weeks or a month, then he would want to come back because he just loved it so much, and painting, you're an artist like I'm an artist. So we understand that it's just like magical thing that when you're painting, you like get into this zone and you tune everything out. It's sort of like being on vacation at a beach. Anyway, so he was frustrated, and he would start paintings and get stuck and restart them and scrape off and restart them. and wasn't getting better, and he just felt frustrated by the whole thing, and he felt like when he made improvements, it was just these little things, and he didn't feel like he would get to the place where he would get to like where people would admire his paintings, and strangers would be willing to buy his paintings, and it wasn't even into having the paintings be purchased that much as he just wanted to get that level of quality out of his artwork instead of making his paintings that looked so amateurish all the time. All right, well, here's another tip for you on that same note. Whenever you are working on a painting and you get stuck and you quit working on it, and then you say, oh, I'm going to scrape off and come back and work on it again, most times you're just going to get stuck in that same spot, okay? Because you don't know how to proceed beyond that point, right? It's just you've got some sort of a block, or you just reached the barrier of what you know about painting for that point. And a lot of times if you scrape off or start over, it's not going to do any good because you don't know what to do to go beyond that point. So the solution is to set it aside, go look at art that is similar, right? Paintings that are kind of like that, and see how they solve the problem. And then come back and you apply what you see in their paintings to fix your painting. It's so much better than starting over. And really, and not to mention a lot more efficient, right? Another thing is too, you can just ask a friend or a teacher that you really trust, say, well, why isn't this looking like this, like I want it to look? And they'll work with you and hopefully let you know. Sometimes that's always not reliable, so looking at pictures of paintings that you like would probably be your first choice. All right, so that's the next tip. So anyway, this guy, he finally made this life-changing painting discovery. All right. And what it was is he was trying to focus too much on doing exactly what everyone was telling him to do with his art, rather than trying to get an understanding of the principles and fundamentals of the art. In essence, the whys of everything, right? And until he understood the whys of it, like why certain paints behaved in certain ways, why transparent paints receded, why opaque paints advanced. That's another little mini tip for you. Why colorful things have a tendency to advance and non-colorful things have a tendency to recede. And he just didn't understand all that. So when he would go and paint opaque paintings in the background and wanted his painting to have depth to it, it would have a tendency not to do that because it didn't understand those principles, how opaque advances instead of recedes. So anyway, so what he started to do was really start to think about why things happened. And not only did he start thinking about them, he started to ask questions from people that he knew in that direction, instead of basically just standing in front of his canvas thinking that it was just going to all come to him, like he was going to be infused by the painting gods with how to do it. And that was the next huge step for this guy. So rather than just blindly taking a green apple and having someone tell you, well, the shadow on that green apple needs to be olive green colored in that painting, he would begin to say, well, why is that it needs to be olive green? Why not blue? Why not the complement of green? Here's another tip for you while I'm on that. Big misconception in art is the complement should be used as the shadow color. Huge, big problem about that. And I don't know where that came from. I think it's more of a stylized thing than the way that light actually behaves, because really the light rarely behaves like that. In fact, shadow color comes from the original light source bouncing off of everything else around the subject, bouncing back into the painting. So shadow color has more to do with the actual color of the object and the light as it bounces off other things. So for example, if you had an egg there, which is white, this is the easiest, and a red fabric around it, the shadow color is going to be red because it's going to bounce off the red and hit in the shadows. I mean, it's really literally that simple. So if you want to know what shadow color is, just look and see what else is around it and pay attention to the light, and mostly pay attention to what it is itself. Like an orange, no matter what you do to that orange, it's never going to have a blue shadow because it is orange to begin with. You might have a very cool orange that's very much toward the blue if there's a big, strong blue light in there, but it's still going to look orange. That's inescapable. And if you are trying to make shadow color out of the complement, you're just going to bang your head against the wall. And, so try not to do that. It makes painting so difficult. And you would not believe how widespread that misconception is. So anyway, rather than just following whatever people what people were saying, he would ask, why, just like a little kid. Why, mommy? Why? And that's kind of what I think this guy went through. He's just really was asking everyone, why do you do that? Why do you do that? Then fortunately, he was fortunate enough to study with David LaFell, which was one of the first teachers he ever had that started to explain kind of the whys of everything, right? And then he kind of became addicted to the whys, and he just could not deal with painting without knowing why something happens or why light behaves a certain way. So then he started studying that and all those kinds of things as well to really get an understanding of it all. And the more he did this and broke down the elements into the whys, the more he understood more of the big picture of it. And he was starting to gain confidence with his paintings because he understood what was going on, because he understood the principles and understood the whys behind it. So that when he made the next brushstroke and the next brushstroke, there was a certain sense to it. You see what I'm saying? And I think then that's when his painting really started to take off, because he was really starting to enjoy it, and he wasn't in that defeating cycle of frustration of, well, it looks like this, but I kind of want it to look like that. And he started to get better and better, and people started to notice his art, and he went out and finally started selling and get into galleries and won painting competitions. And then some of his friends asked him if they could teach them what he learned, kind of the whys of it all. And then the more and more people asked him to teach, and some even asked him to create online painting classes. And many of his students went on to make amazing paintings and get into galleries themselves and just create some beautiful stuff. And he started feeling better about himself, no more frustration, and all that stifling periods where he wanted to quit painting were gone. He just really, really enjoyed painting now. And for those of you who have not already figured this out, that guy's me. And this is my story of kind of how I went through. And I went through this process of being frustrated. And for those of you who are frustrated out there with trying to learn how to paint, I know what it's like to be in your shoes. I've been there before. I've quit painting 10 times at least, thinking I would never come back to it. But you know what? Painting's so wonderful that how could you ever stay away, And that's kind of my story of how I've learned painting over the decades, And really, every artist really is self-taught. Other artists will provide information for you, and they may even provide explanations for you. But ultimately, it's up to you as an artist to accept or reject those concepts that are provided for you. And the more that you can understand the whys behind those concepts, the easier it will be for you to make a decision whether or not you want to accept or reject. For example, if you look back at using the complement for the shadows, if you understand that light really never behaves that way, then you'd be a very easy time for you to reject that concept like I did. Or you might say, well, I like the way that looks because it creates a nice polarization between the light and the shadows of the elements. I like that for a style effect. I know that that's not the way light really behaves, but I want it for a style effect. Well, then you're fantastic. You can accept that concept that way, But at that point, you understand the reasons why you're doing what you're doing. And it makes it so much easier. Anyway, I just really wanted to share that with you and kind of explain to you how I developed my methods, not only of painting, but also my methods for teaching, and it's kind of like this whole childlike why thing. And in the next video, I'm going to share what I consider to be insider information and tips about how my discovery, I learned this from a child, not only changed my life, but the way other people's paintings and stories as well. Then I'm also going to talk with you about some great tips that'll help stop being so frustrated and have fun with you painting. Kind of in terms of like motivation or the mental game, not so much necessarily about the actual applying the paint. That's all great, but we get so focused in on that, we kind of almost become paralyzed. So what we need to do is really understand the motivation and what makes us want to paint, and get better and better and better. So what I would like to know from you is, if you don't mind, leave a comment. Let me know what kind of frustrations you've had in the past. Maybe you haven't had this story and you were lucky enough to find a great instructor right away that just taught you everything and didn't have to figure anything out for yourself. That would be great. I'd even love to hear about that too. But others that have gone through that similar kind of experience where they just felt like they weren't getting it, like they were stupid or something. That's what I felt. I felt like I was stupid or something. I wasn't ever going to get it, but I knew I was smart. I'd been to school, done all sorts of things. I just couldn't figure out why I wasn't getting it. So I'd love to hear your comments, and I'll have another video out coming in the next couple days, and I think you're really going to like that video. So leave me a comment, please, and let me know what kind of frustrations you've had with your whole process in painting, or just any comment about anything, about the videos, about the tips I just left. I'd love to hear from you. All right. Thanks. Have a great day.